Star Wars fan, Anakin Center, Obikin family-oriented, Anidala CP trace, a large number of original characters, group portraits, original storyline, Star Wars. As the Clone Wars approached their end, Anakin followed Obi Wan to the Battle of Utapa. At the same time, Order 66 was implemented, the Jedi Order was destroyed, and the Galactic Empire replaced the Republic. Anakin did not fall into the dark side and was rescued along with Obi Wan to take refuge on the planet of Corellia. The chosen son of heaven resurrected from death in Corellia and gradually established his own power. Corellia experienced a revolution and faced numerous conflicts with the Empire. The situation in the Milky Way is turbulent, and the rebel army is rising to confront the Empire. How should he survive, fight, and ultimately balance the force in the Galactic Empire controlled by the Sith? Chapter 1. Coruscant Anakin's Infiltration into the Archives. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Anakin Skywalker felt terrible. Nothing is worse than now. He has never had such a big problem before, and no one in the entire galaxy is worse off than him. He has been constantly dreaming of the death of his pregnant wife, Padme Amidala, just like his mother many years ago. Even worse, he cannot tell anyone about this matter. He is a Jedi warrior, a commander of the Galactic Navy, and they are leading a war. The despicable Jedi creed, the creed of no attachment and no family. Of course, not everyone cannot say that Anakin told Speaker Palpatine about this matter. Palpatine has been his friend for many years, supporting and taking care of him since he arrived at the Jedi Temple in Coruscant. But the other party clearly has no help but love for this kind of thing. Anakin scratched his head and remembered the story of the wise Darth Plagueis that the speaker had told him in the theater. Legend had it that the Sith Lord had a profound understanding of the Force, allowing him to directly create life using pathogens and prevent death. At first, Anakin sneered at this and thought to himself, isn't this Sith Lord still dead? But as soon as he returned to the Jedi Temple, he immediately entered the huge archives of the temple to search, and the result was of course futile. The name of Darth Plagueis was not recorded in any of the Jedi's archives. He knew that there was a secret archive in the Jedi Temple that contained some top-secret information, which was only open to the Masters of the Jedi Council. Darth Plagueis must be inside here, Anakin thought to himself. However, this raised a second issue. Although he was assigned to the committee refused to grant him the title of Master and severely humiliated him in front of the entire committee meeting. Not to mention, after the committee meeting a few days in advance, Obi Wan secretly found him and assigned him a secret task of monitoring the speaker. This is treason. He fiercely retorted at the time, as they were demanding that he betray the Speaker of the Galactic Republic, an old friend, and it turned out that the person who made this request was his own teacher Obi Wan, who taught him loyalty. He felt that his emotions, towards the Speaker, and towards Obi Wan had all been exploited, and he had become a dark and inconspicuous villain, playing the role of such a double-sided spy. The despicable Jedi Council, including Obi Wan's Jedi Council. Wait, Obi Wan. He suddenly had an inspiration. Master of the Jedi Council, Obi Wan must be able to go to the archive with Dos Prestigious information. How did he forget about this? He needs to obtain Obi Wan's ID card, but he can't mention it to Obi Wan about Padme, so he decided to steal it. He found his apartment with Obi Wan through the familiar corridor, where he had lived for 10 years. He spent his entire apprenticeship without changing the password at the door. He entered Obi Wan's room and unknowingly walked his ID card from his desk. He didn't have time to delay, so he immediately went to the secret archives and entered smoothly with Obi Wan's ID card. He found a seat and sat down to flip through it. Darth Plagueis, where are you? He muttered, searching in front of the indexing computer in the archives. There is nothing. He changed a few more keywords, Sith, fibroplasma, creating life. He tried one by one. He hasn't had a good meal or sleep for several days, and he feels extremely tired. His stomach hurts due to irregular eating habits. After searching for more than a dozen keywords and flipping through countless literature and reports, he leaned against his computer desk and accidentally fell asleep. After an unknown amount of time, he was awakened by the sound of people. Skywalker. What are you doing here? He struggled to lift his head from his slumber, opened his eyes, and saw the person he least wanted to see in the entire galaxy at this moment. Meth 1. Without hesitation, one grabbed his collar and pulled him up from his seat. What are you doing here? Who let you in? He saw Obi-Wan's ID card on the table and said, Obi-Wan asked you to come. He didn't know how to answer, the temperature was bad, and his face changed from black to deep purple. He took out his communicator and dialed a number, shouting, Master Kenobi, please come to the secret archives immediately and keep an eye on your apprentice. Not long after, Obi-Wan arrived, and Anakin hardly dared to look into his eyes. Your former disciple, without permission, broke into the confidential archives, browsed through the most important batch of documents in the Jedi Temple, and stole your identity card. One shouted. Obi-Wan's voice was calm, Anakin, what are you doing here? What made you steal my things and want to break in here? It's over, everything messed up. Anakin couldn't believe things could have gotten worse. He stuttered and couldn't say anything, his mind was rapidly fabricating a reason, and any reason seemed absurd and comical. Mei Si-wen was furious and said to a temple guard who came upon hearing the sound, check his search records and see what he was peeking at. The temple guard opened the computer's search records and showed them to Wen and Obi-Wan. Darth Prague's, Sith, fibroplasma, creating life. Obi-Wan repeated incredulously, Anakin, what is this? What made you break the rules and come here to search for these nonsensical things? The plan failed, and now he also feels that his actions are foolish. After all, the speaker also said that it was just a legend, but he seized this clue like a life-saving straw, stole things, ran to forbidden places, violated temple regulations to search for an unfounded story. Obi-Wan and Wen were both staring at him, waiting for an answer. He couldn't betray Padme or expose their marriage, so he decided to keep it hidden. A few days ago, Speaker Palpatine told me a legend about the Sith, named Darth Prague's. He silently apologized to the speaker in his heart. This matter is not an important secret, it is just a story. It seems there is no problem telling the Jedi Council, right? The speaker told you a legend about the Sith. Wen asked suspiciously. Yes, Anakin's mouth was dry and his tongue was dry, and he was nervously clasping his nails. He said this Darth Plagueis can create life with fibrinogen. Mess Wen's expression became even more strange. In order not to expose Padme, Anakin quickly continued to explain, he said this Sith Lord can stop people from dying, using chlamydia. I found it interesting, and when my mind was hot, I came here. I'm sorry, he apologized and bowed low to Obi-Wan, I'm sorry, Master. This sounds like making up a story. Skywalker, just because the speaker told you a legend about the Sith, you came here. Do you know we were in a war? Your behavior can go to military court. Also, why did he tell you an outrageous story about the Sith? Mezwin shook his head in disbelief. Obi-Wan's blue-green eyes gazed at him, and the Force signal detected his thoughts through their connection. He struggled to restrain his thoughts, keeping Padme at the bottom of his mind. I believe he's telling the truth, Master Wen, Obi-Wan said. He didn't look through any important confidential information, it was just a momentary lack of clarity. The temple guard interjected, Masters, I have checked all the search and access records, and he has indeed only searched for these. Mei Si-wen sighed wearily and said to Obi-Wan, we are winning a war, Obi-Wan. The war is coming to an end, and the speaker has been in his position unwilling to resign. At the same time, we are also full of conflicts with the Parliament. At this critical time, we don't have time to watch your former apprentice's undisciplined behavior. I hope you can pay more attention to discipline him. I think it's strange that the speaker should tell him the story of the Sith Lord, Mace Windu scratched his bare chin. It's correct for us to have him monitor the speaker. Next, I'm going to convene a meeting of the Jedi Council to discuss this issue with our spies. Obi Wan, please attend as soon as you receive the news. Anakin's heart sank, and he did indeed implicate the speaker. Then one ordered him, for the next month, you will be confined to the temple and not allowed to leave. You and the 501 Legion will go to the front line and operate under Obi-Wan's surveillance, not without authorization, until the Jedi Council lifts the ban. After that, Max Wen turned around and walked away with great strides. Now there was only him and Obi-Wan left. Obi-Wan picked up his ID card from the table, placed his hand on his shoulder, and silently pushed him out of the secret archives. Since the matter had reached this point, he decided to let it go and bravely met Obi-Wan's gaze, pretending to be relaxed and saying, "Master, do you know that there really is Darth Pragues? Do Jedi or Sith really have a way to use pathogens to prevent death?" Obi-Wan's gaze was strange. "It seems that you really have a strong obsession with this legend. As far as I know, there is no such thing. Whether it's a Jedi, a Sith, or an ordinary person, death equally falls on everyone's heads." Anakin sighed. Sure enough, it was this cliché. "We are in a war, Anakin, don't let this happen again," he said. Okay, it seems that Obi-Wan is really going to be ordered to restrain himself. Now he not only failed to solve the problem, but also couldn't even go see Padme. The already terrible situation could be even worse. Anakin Skywalker is really terrible. Note. Asterisk: this article is based on the prequel trilogy, and readers who have read the prequel can read it without any obstacles. Using POV-style writing with location and characters, there will be a large number of original characters and storylines in the later stages. Asterisk: this article is about the original works AU Towards the Brain, and Anakin did not fall into the dark side. Pure original plot. Chapter 2. Coruscant Anakin Turning Point. You are listening at novelfull.audio. He was on pins and needles at the Jedi Council meeting. The Jedi Council is currently holding an emergency meeting, and along with the Masters of the Jedi Spy Council, Anakin vaguely remembers a Master Quinlan Vos on the Spy Council. They are discussing the topic of the Speaker and the Sith, and according to information accidentally leaked by Dooku to Obi-Wan, the Sith Lord is controlling the entire Parliament. Anakin didn't have the heart to listen carefully to their discussion. Now, their topic has reached a ridiculous point where the Speaker is under the control of the Sith Lord's mind, and they are sending spies and investigators to the Speaker's office to forcibly gather evidence and investigate. And all of this was because of his mistake, he told the committee about their conversation. This is an unfounded speculation. Anakin couldn't help but jump out and interrupt. The Speaker is a good person, he just wants to end the war as soon as possible. Don't doubt others just because of such a foolish event. After all, this Darth Plagueis may not exist. The committee meeting room quieted down, and Wen sternly retorted, "Listen to what you have to say. Is it not suspicious enough for the Speaker to tell you a legend about the Sith Lord, an unrecorded Jedi?" Anakin jumped up and glared angrily at the temperature. "My wife is dying, and you are doubting the Speaker for no reason, doubting the only friend who supports me." His anger is almost uncontrollable. Come on, he thought, it's just an ordinary person sitting in the committee seat. Do you have the ability to use your 7-move swordsmanship to challenge me? Anakin, sit down. Obi-Wan's cold voice pierced through the scorching anger. Anakin realized he was standing in the middle staring at Wen, and everyone was watching him. Anger instantly turned into shame, and he walked back to his seat with his head down. "We should do our best to investigate this matter," Master Yoda said slowly. "There is no room for error in the matter of the Sith. Send Master Vos to approach the Speaker and investigate the Sith Lord hidden behind the scenes in the Parliament." So it was decided. The next discussion of the committee revived Anakin. According to frontline intelligence, the leader of the separatist forces, Grievous, is organizing an army on the planet Utapa. Now that Dooku is dead, if we can kill Grievous, the war will soon end. Master Kenobi, we should be sent, Master Yoda pondered for a moment and said. I agree, Wen said. Yoda and I will stay in Coruscant to investigate the true identity of the Sith Lord. Almost all the committee masters are on the front line now, and Master Kenobi is currently our best swordsman who can defeat Grievous. Obi Wan hesitated for a moment before finally agreeing, I agree. Currently, going to Utapa is indeed the best choice for me. So we. Halfway through the temperature, Anakin suddenly interrupted and said, I'll go with Obi Wan. Mei Si-wen looked at him angrily and said, You have been grounded, and you have to monitor the speaker's actions in Parliament. As you said, I cannot leave the temple and go to the council. I have been banned, Anakin sarcastically said with some pride. You have personally given orders that I will have Obi-Wan monitoring wherever I go. Mei Si-wen was speechless when he was scolded, after all, these were his original words. He was holding back his anger and was about to think about how to retaliate. Master Yoda spoke calmly, Yes, young Skywalker. Let's go together and follow your master. Anakin was very surprised. His previous anger was swept away, and Yoda stood up for him on the committee. Maxwell glared at Yoda in anger, his hairless head turning into a comical pig liver color. Anakin suddenly wanted to laugh out loud. The committee meeting ended like this, and he followed Obi-Wan and left the conference room. He pondered the next strategy in his heart and couldn't help but feel delighted. First, he no longer had to fulfill the task of monitoring the speaker, which made him feel anxious. Finally, he could return to the battlefield to kill the enemy openly and do something he believed was just. Secondly, he left the temple and had the opportunity to meet Padme. When he returned from Utapa, the first thing he did was to visit her. You seem very persistent about going with me, Obi-Wan observed him and quickly erected a mental barrier, afraid Obi-Wan would know the truth. You will need me in this matter, Master, Anakin replied in a calm and professional tone. After all, Grievous has 4 hands and 4 lightsabers. They have arrived at the port of call for the transport ship. Obi-Wan turned around and said, Your recent behavior has been very abnormal. I know you don't like the task of monitoring the speaker. If you can't persist, I will explain to the committee. I don't think they will force you. However, you must learn to be patient and possess the discipline of a Jedi, especially during this critical period. After all, you are no longer an apprentice. Anakin blushed with embarrassment and didn't know what to say. He hesitated and said, I know, Master. I'm really sorry, I have no excuse for my behavior. He forced himself to look up into Obi-Wan's eyes and said, I know I have repeatedly violated orders and always offended you. I feel hopeless about the committee. I have never been grateful for your guidance, and I want you to know that I am grateful. A faint smile hung on Obi-Wan's lips. You are powerful and intelligent, Obi-Wan's tone softened. I am proud of what you look like today. You have become my ideal Jedi warrior. Anakin felt like he was going to faint, and Obi-Wan felt proud of him. He has never said this before, he has been working hard to gain recognition from the other party for so many years. Obi-Wan felt his thoughts and reached out to touch his cheek. We've known each other since you were 9 years old, and at that time you just reached my waist, he emphasized with a little force as he pinched his chin. Most importantly, I know you have a kind heart, Anakin. You've had a heart as gold since you were young. Remember this, okay? Anakin's nose became sour and he nodded without speaking. They arrived on the transport ship and left the Jedi Temple and the surface of Coruscant. I don't know if it's because he has finally gained Obi-Wan's recognition for over a decade, or because he has been really lacking rest lately. As he watched the Jedi Temple gradually shrink, he felt a daze, as if the days in the temple were far away from him, like another self, a 9-year-old self, watching his current self go far away. A real premonition came from the Force. He could never go back, those simple and happy days. Obi-Wan walked over and patted him, saying, It will take us at least 2 days to get to Utapa. You've been looking tired lately, so when you arrive on the flagship, you can go rest. We still have to defeat Grievous. Anakin did not refute this time and followed the order to lie down and rest. He didn't have any nightmares today. From here on, the plot begins to diverge from the original work. Anakin follows Obi Wan to Utapa to eliminate Grievous, while the Jedi Council goes to the Speaker's office to investigate the Sith Lord. Order 66 is about to happen. Chapter 3. Utapaobiwang Grievous. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You look shorter than I imagined, said Grievous, the robot, one of the leaders of the separatist forces in the Milky Way, in a hoarse voice. He deliberately shook out the 7 lightsabers at his waist and extended all 4 hands, making a threatening gesture. You may become my latest lightsaber collection, Jedi, he said with the last 2 words. You look even weaker than I imagined, Anakin replied before Obi-Wan could speak. Your good days are coming to an end. Obi-Wan sent a force signal to remind Anakin not to act recklessly. Dooku is already dead, your army is surrounded by Utapa, and there is a continuous stream of clone troops blocking behind. You cannot escape, Obi-Wan said sternly. I advise you to surrender to the Republic immediately, perhaps you can avoid Dooku's fate. Grievous let out an angry hiss, it's not certain whose end it is. As he spoke, his 4 hands reached towards his waist, grabbing 4 lightsabers and igniting them simultaneously. This time, let's go together. Obi-Wan whispered to Anakin as they both lit the blue lightsaber. Grievous made an exaggerated pose, with the top 2 lightsabers spinning around like a big windmill, with 2 hands holding the lightsabers in a defensive position and 2 mechanical claws jumping towards them on the ground. Anakin used his most skilled 5-move sword technique and launched a fierce attack, while Obi-Wan did not fall behind and used the 3-move sword technique to defend Anakin. This fierce melee made the command post of this separatist force appear narrow. Anakin attacked fiercely without hesitation, but Grievous was still a robot, attacking with all 4 hands at the same time. Surprisingly, he fell behind Anakin's attack and had time to mock him. Obi-Wan dare not be distracted and focuses on the enemy's lower body. Grievous cannot also hold a lightsaber with his feet, perhaps there will be weaknesses in the lower body. Grievous used one hand to turn the lightsaber again, forming a barrier. Anakin was temporarily unable to attack and was forced to retreat slightly. Then, the robot quickly used the lightsaber to dig a large hole in the ground. What was he doing? Obi-Wan's attention was distracted, and 2 lightsabers on top of his head swung towards him at the same time. Obi-Wan could lift the lightsaber grid to block it, then Grievous extended his free foot, and Obi-Wan was kicked hard into the hole and fell to the first floor downstairs. Obi-Wan. He heard Anakin's exclamation from the rooftop and sent a signal in the Force, telling Anakin not to be distracted. Now only Anakin is fighting, he must go up and join immediately. At that moment, he saw a blaster gun lying on the ground and a thought flashed through his mind. Grievous was not a Force user and should not have foreseen danger. He sensed in the Force that Grievous' attention was entirely focused on Anakin, forcing him towards a corner. Now he should face his back to the hole. Obi-Wan opens the safety of the explosive gun, it's now. He jumped up with the help of the Force, grabbed the edge of the hole with his arm, and with one hand holding a blaster gun, aimed at Grievous at the back and fired a shot. Grievous' lightsaber continued to hum around a few times, then stopped and fell forward to the ground, with a large hole in his torso emitting smoke. Anakin looked at him with a shocked expression, unable to imagine his elegant and rigid teacher father using an explosive gun to bombard people. Obi-Wan smiled at him and climbed up to insert the blaster back into his waist. It's really uncivilized. He roasted about himself. You go inform Cody that Grievous is dead. Integrate the troops and let's go to the upper cave to clear the remaining robots, he ordered Anakin. I need to report to the Jedi Council. Once I arrive, I will set off immediately. Anakin nodded and walked out to find Commander Cody. He joined the channel of the Jedi Council, and to his surprise, only Metswin appeared in the holographic image. "I guess your action has been successful, Master Kenobi." The other party looked anxious, and even across the universe, Obi Wan could feel their unease. "Yes, Master, Grievous has been confirmed dead, and Anakin is leading the 212 troops to eliminate the remaining forces of Utapa. Now that all the leaders of the separatist forces have been eliminated, without any accidents, the war will soon come to an end," Obi-Wan said. "Obi-Wan, I feel very uneasy." Methuen whispered frankly. "Quinlan Vos has made the latest progress in the investigation into the Speaker's office, and combined with his previous experience of lurking around Dooku, I can be certain that the Speaker is indeed influenced by the Sith Lord." Obi-Wan couldn't help but hold his breath and listen attentively. The entire Parliament is under the control of the Sith Lord, and now the war is coming to an end. According to the law, the Speaker should step down, but the sense of unease has been increasing recently. Messwin doesn't look good. Obi-Wan has never seen him like this before. "I hope you can be even more careful and not trust anyone. After this mission is completed, immediately bring your troops back to Coruscant. I always feel like something big is about to happen." "I think so too," Obi-Wan agreed. "I will be careful. As soon as the war here in Utapa is over, I will report to the committee immediately." Mei Siwen said anxiously, "May the Force be with you," and then quickly hung up. Obi-Wan pondered Macewen's words and arrived at the entrance of the command tower. Anakin and Cody had already assembled their team and waited at the door. He forced his thoughts to focus on the present moment and smiled at Anakin and Cody, saying, "Grievous is dead. Let's go to the upper cave and eliminate the remnants of the separatist forces." The clones cheered as Obi-Wan observed the surroundings. They were in a grand canyon, with deep lake water at the bottom and almost vertical rock walls filled with caves. Inside the caves was the location of the separatist robot army. The clone team carries rocket launchers that allow them to fly, but tanks and walking cannons cannot reach cliffs, which means heavy firepower cannot be used here. The key is how he and Anakin should get up. Obi-Wan looked around and summoned a giant lizard using the Force. The giant lizard climbed over the opposite rock wall, and in Anakin's worshipful gaze, he climbed onto the lizard's back. He then extended a hand to the other person and Anakin also climbed up. He kicked the lizard's stomach, and the big lizard immediately jumped up and crawled up the narrow path on the rock wall. Cody ignited the rocket launcher with the clone soldiers and took off to follow them. They stopped on a slightly wider platform by the entrance of a cave, and at that moment, Commander Cody received a communication. He opened the communicator and a blue holographic image with a hood appeared. "Commander Cody, it's time to execute Order 66, the person in the video said in a hoarse voice. Cody turned to him, his expression numb and unfamiliar, and he raised his gun. Chapter 4. Utapaanakin Order Number 66. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Cody turned around and shot at Obi-Wan without hesitation. Anakin sensed danger ahead of time in the Force, erected his lightsaber to block a shot towards him, and then rushed towards Obi-Wan, pushing him to the ground without hesitation. Obi-Wan landed in a twisted posture and heard a clicking sound as the beam of the blaster gun brushed against Anakin's thigh. The scorching pain came from his leg, and he didn't have the time to look down. The two of them hugged each other and fell to the edge of the cliff. Immediately after, dense explosive guns rained down on them, shattering the rocks and rolling along with them on the ground. There was no escape on the bare cliff, and he sensed a rocket barrel aimed at them. He dragged Obi-Wan down the cliff, and the two of them separated in the air, rolling for a few seconds before falling heavily into the bottomless bay. Someone is shooting into the water, but the surface of the water blocks the energy of the explosive gun, making it impossible for the gun to harm them. Anakin opened his eyes underwater and saw Obi-Wan by his side. He felt a little relieved, covered his mouth and nose, pulled out a respirator from his waist, and put it on his mouth, quietly hiding underwater with Obi-Wan. The water blocked out external sounds and movements, and he held his breath to prevent the bubbles in his respirator from catching the enemy's attention. He remained motionless underwater. After a while, the traces of the explosive gun disappeared, as if the enemy had confirmed their deaths. Soon, his own clone soldiers, would dive underwater to search for the bodies. He gestured to Obi Wan, and the two of them scurried through an underwater cave, swam to the other side that the clone team couldn't see, then emerged from the water and climbed to the shore. The wound on Anakin's leg was still painful, but it had eased slightly compared to before. He saw Obi Wan struggling to stand up and then failing. He quickly ran over. "Master, you are injured." "Ah." "I twisted my waist," Obi Wan said with a grin, "my old waist is finally getting tired." Anakin didn't find it funny at all and said to Obi Wan, "We must leave here immediately. Can you walk?" Obi Wan shook his head as if to say something. Anakin interrupted him, "Hurry up, come on my back, I'll carry you on my back." Obi Wan hesitated a bit, but eventually climbed onto his back. Anakin gritted his teeth and stood up, walking towards the grassland far away from the clone camp. "Anakin, your leg is injured," Obi Wan noticed after a while and said to him. "It's just a minor skin injury," Anakin insisted, erecting a barrier to prevent Obi Wan from feeling his pain and ignoring the wound on his leg as he continued to move forward. "For me, this is nothing at all. I've experienced even worse things before." At this moment, they sensed everything happening. A huge cry of sorrow erupted from the Force, and the signals of death and blood instantly filled the entire galaxy. Someone was dying, it was the Jedi who were dying. He realized in despair that the Jedi warriors of the entire galaxy were being slaughtered. Anakin was struck by this strong signal and felt the earth spinning. He slowly knelt down with Obi Wan on his back, trying to withstand the dizziness. Obi Wan clearly sensed it and grabbed Anakin's shoulder, saying, "They have also experienced our situation. The clones betrayed them, and they did not survive." Not long after, Anakin gradually regained his sanity. He struggled to move forward, trying to raise his spiritual barrier, ignoring the death and anger in the Force. The Force was howling and bleeding, and he and Obi Wan struggled to survive on the vast grassland, trying to stay away from the clone soldiers and the soldiers he had fought alongside for 3 years. He didn't have the heart to speak, didn't know what to say, just focused on moving forward, persevering, staying away from here, staying away from the enemy. Not long after, Obi Wan patted his back and said, "We've walked far enough. Let's stop and rest for a while." He put Obi Wan down, and the other person frowned and tried to sit upright. Obi Wan reached out his hand as a gesture and said, "Let me take a look at your leg." Anakin remained silent and extended his leg. Obi Wan carefully examined the wound and said, "Let's rest here. Everything is unclear now. We can only temporarily hide here." Obi Wan lit up a fire and took off his cloak to dry. "I can't figure out why our own people would attack us," Anakin said numbly. "I feel like they're trying to kill us. The other Jedi have all been killed. I don't understand." Obi Wan remained silent for a long time before he said, "I can't figure it out like you, Anakin. I feel like we're the only ones left in the entire galaxy." Anakin couldn't help but shudder and leaned closer to Obi Wan, trying to gain a sense of security from his Force signal. Obi Wan placed his hand on his back and said, "You lie down and rest first, I'll watch." Anakin lay down tightly against Obi Wan. He couldn't rest with his eyes closed, and the waves in his mind surged as if he was experiencing a storm. The betrayal of the clones, the destruction of the Jedi Order, and the continuous torment of his illusions in recent days, Padme. He doesn't know how many people are still alive, he doesn't know if the Jedi Order is still there, he doesn't know what happened in the Milky Way. He doesn't know how long he and Obi Wan can live. He suddenly felt that he should tell Obi Wan something. "If this was the last time, Master, I must confess something to you." Anakin's voice unexpectedly calmed down. If Obi Wan had disliked him for it, there was no turning back now. I have violated the rules of the Jedi Order and the Jedi Creed. I am married to Naboo Counselor Padme Amidala. Obi-Wan didn't answer for a moment, just placed one hand on Anakin's head. Anakin looked up at him. I have always known about your relationship with Padme, but I didn't realize that you were already married. How long has it been? Since 3 years ago after the Battle of Genesis, Obi-Wan's hand on his head paused for a moment. Anakin sat up nervously and continued, she is pregnant. Recently, I've been dreaming of her dying in hallucinations and dying in difficult childbirth. Anakin's fear returned, and he was about to cry. His wife was dying, and now he himself was also dying. He had no way to save her. Obi-Wan's hand fell on his back and pulled him back to reality. Just like your mother did that time? Obi-Wan asked cautiously. He couldn't speak and nodded. Obi-Wan extended his arms and hurried forward. Obi-Wan's voice above his head said, "We're stuck here and can't leave. I promise, when we're safe, we'll go find her immediately." He admitted that they had no other choice but to do so. Chapter 5. Utapaobiwang's Endless Situation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. They continued to walk on the boundless grassland. At this moment, the 212 Legion should still be around Utapa and may have been ordered to blockade the entire planet, and it is highly likely that they have been conducting a carpet search for the two. Utapa does not have many towns, a small population, and no launch towers except for the bases of the separatist forces. However, their current state is unable to fight against the remaining separatist forces. They had almost no way to escape immediately, while also avoiding the search for clones. Obi-Wan noticed that Anakin's wound was rapidly deteriorating, possibly due to infection from soaking in water. How do you feel? Should we find a place to rest first? No need. Anakin gritted his teeth and continued walking forward. But the signal from the Force showed that he felt very painful. We must stop now, Anakin. Your stamina has run out and you need rest, Obi-Wan insisted. Anakin rarely pays attention to his physical condition and always pushes himself to the limit. Okay, Anakin agreed irritably, and they arrived at a nearby cave. Anakin let Obi-Wan down. Obi-Wan's waist once again felt a sharp pain, and he tried to ignore it. They now have no way to treat the lumbar spine injury. Let me take a look at your legs, Obi-Wan turned to ask Anakin. His disciple now looked very unwell, as if struggling to stay alert, but pain and fatigue seeped out from behind Anakin's erected barrier. Even more terrifying was that he felt something was wrong in the Force, with excessive heat radiating from him. He reached out and probed Anakin's forehead, which was scorching terrifyingly. You're sick, Obi-Wan whispered anxiously, placing his hand on his cheek. You have a fever, the temperature is very high, why didn't you tell me? Anakin didn't answer. Obi-Wan thought he knew the reason. Anakin couldn't leave him alone. Obi-Wan couldn't help but curse at himself. Kenobi, you're dragging your feet again. Focus on the present, he forces himself to break free from guilt. Can I take a look? Anakin nodded slowly, and Obi-Wan tore open his torn pants. The gunshot wound from the explosive gun was indeed infected and inflamed. Now the wound has turned purple, with redness and swelling around, and some bodily fluids oozing out. It was already sunset in Utapa, and a cool breeze blew by, making him feel Anakin trembling. Using Bacta to treat wounds is no longer meaningful, and using the temperature of a lightsaber to burn wounds for disinfection can only bring pain and cannot solve the problem. Obviously, bacteria or viruses have entered Anakin's body from the wound. Obi-Wan once again blamed himself in his heart. If only he could handle it earlier and force Anakin to treat the wound. At that time, his mind was not very clear, and he felt that this was just a superficial wound. For what Anakin had experienced before, it could only be considered a skin injury. However, for some reason, this shallow wound triggered an infection, and bacteria were entering the body along the wound. Jedi usually do not get sick, and if injured, only very serious wounds can cause serious consequences. Fibroplasma is active in their blood and body, usually killing all enemies. Bacteria, viruses, tumors. However, now the son of Tencent, who has the highest number of chlamydia, has fallen ill due to a superficial wound. It is unclear whether it was due to pure accident that Anakin did not rest and eat well these days, or because the tide of the Force has entered a low point. After all, the Jedi Order has been destroyed, and the light side of the Force has died. And they are trapped here, without support, without supplies, with pursuers everywhere. Obi Wan, the great Jedi Master and negotiator, felt completely helpless for the first time. Anakin shuddered again as night fell on the planet Utapa. The heat of the sun was dissipating, and cold air invaded from the entrance of the mountain, invading his feverish body. Obi-Wan took off his dried cloak and wrapped it around Anakin's body. "Rest, I will stay here." Obi-Wan gently let Anakin lie down and used the Force to push him into a shallow healing meditation state. Anakin seemed to want to resist, but ultimately succumbed powerlessly. In his meditation, he seemed restless, constantly tormented by his nightmares and the signals of all the Jedi's tragic deaths in the galaxy. He trembled on the ground, his expression painful, and occasionally moaned softly. Obi-Wan had no choice but to protect him with his own Force barrier and wrap his arms around him. He dared not search for allies in the Force for help. The massacre of the Jedi continued, and the Force was filled with the smell of death and blood. Once he lowered the barrier, the pain in the Force would completely engulf his consciousness. Moreover, he cannot let Anakin be discovered. The Sith Lord who controls everything is still searching for them, and the Sith Lord controls the Council. The entire galaxy is an enemy. Anakin is seriously ill and unconscious, while his lumbar spine is injured and difficult to fight. Is that right? Anakin muttered something unconsciously. In the darkness, Obi-Wan couldn't see his face clearly, so he quickly asked, "What's wrong? Does it hurt somewhere?" "Mom," Anakin's robotic arm reached helplessly into the air, and Obi-Wan grabbed his hand, getting closer in an attempt to hear him clearly. "Mom." Anakin's hoarse voice finally became clearer, and Obi-Wan froze all over. In an instant, his inner pain surpassed the dull pain from his waist. His disciple is calling out to his deceased mother. Obi-Wan hugged Anakin tighter, completely ignoring the Jedi's prohibition of attachment. The Jedi Order had been destroyed, and he was unsure if he was still a Jedi. Now he only had Anakin. Anakin shivered in his chest, softly calling out the name of his poor, tragically deceased, slave mother. "I'm sorry, Anakin. I can't do anything about it." In the pitch black, he buried his face in Anakin's hair, letting tears flow on his face. "I promise, you will get better, you will get better." He can only choose to believe so stubbornly. Chapter 6. The Fall of the Galactic Republic of Coruscant. Candace. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The assassination of the Jedi traitor on me has injured my body and ruined my appearance. However, my heart has never been so firm before. Councillor Candace looked at the twisted face of the speaker in terror in the Parliament building, and his voice echoed in the huge dome. For the safety and stability of the Milky Way, the Galactic Republic will be reorganized into the Galactic Empire. Thunderous applause resounded in the Parliament Hall, enduring and echoing. "Emperor! Emperor! Emperor!" Someone shouted loudly, quickly turning into rhythmic footsteps, echoing throughout the entire hall. Members of the Galactic Council loudly supported their new emperor, stepping on the abandoned constitution of the Republic and announcing the birth of the Galactic Empire. "Emperor! Emperor! Emperor!" This is the death of democracy, amidst thunderous applause. She felt dizzy and tinnitus, and a suffocating sensation hit her. The thunderous cheers gradually weakened in her mind, buzzing as she squeezed through rows of seats and enthusiastic crowd standing, jumping, and raising her hands. Finally, she took a breath of fresh air. When she regained her senses, she found herself standing on an outdoor platform outside the Parliament building. "What's wrong with you, counselor?" She turned her head and found Yang looking at her with concern. The other party was not wearing the long robe and uniform of the Corellian Jedi, but was wearing plain clothes, with the lightsaber hidden inside the coat. A few days ago, while she was processing her medical leave, the new president of Corellia and the leader of the Corellian Jedi, Master, insisted on sending a Jedi to protect her. Although the Corellian Jedi almost never left the galaxy to carry out missions, in this chaotic special period, Candace still agreed. Moreover, she not only needs to leave during this sensitive period, but also needs to go to Utapa to carry out a secret mission. "I'm fine, I couldn't catch my breath, so I came out." Yang stared at the heavily smoking Coruscant Jedi temple in the distance, without speaking. Candace didn't know if the other party was feeling sad for them, or secretly grateful that such a thing hadn't happened in Corellia. She knew the delicate relationship between the Corellian Jedi and the mainstream Jedi of the Galactic Republic, and during her time as a member of Parliament, the relationship between the Corellian Jedi and the Coruscant Jedi Council was particularly tense. Yang seems to have had some personal connections with several mainstream Jedi, and she remembers having some conflicts with the Corellian Jedi Council as a member of the Corellian Council. Since the failed assassination of the Speaker of the House by the Jedi, 32 standards have passed since the implementation of Order 66. During this period of melee, the President sent her a secret report. It has been confirmed that Anakin Skywalker and General Obi Wan Kenobi are in Utapa, and she immediately went to Utapa to bring the two back to Corellia. Be sure to keep it confidential and secure. She did not dare to reply to the President. Coruscant is in a mess. The Jedi Temple has been attacked by clones, and the Parliament is in chaos. But she does not know whether Coruscant's military has resumed signal interception and detection. Therefore, she pretended that everything was normal and submitted her resignation to the Speaker's office, now the Emperor, and then handed over the work as usual, recommending a temporary replacement. She was very grateful that Master Clark seemed to be able to predict and sent a Jedi from Corellia to accompany her. Now she can confidently rely on Yang to complete this task. The Jedi of Corellia and the Jedi of the Galactic Republic are both Jedi, and through their magical superpowers, they will definitely be able to find two war heroes. "I think we can leave Coruscant now," Candace thought for a moment and said to the other person, "There's nothing here that needs me anymore." "Have you completed all your official procedures?" The Galactic Republic outside the atmosphere of Coruscant. The Galactic Empire clone garrison has just obtained permission, so it's best for us to leave now, Yang reminded meaningfully. Candace nodded. As the other party had said, there were many dreams at night, and it was best for them to leave now. She walked ahead, followed closely by Yang, vigilantly sensing the surroundings. They left behind the thunderous vibrations and frenzy, walking on the cold upper streets of Coruscant in the early morning. The force is above her, she didn't even have time to roll up her bedding, she didn't have time to handle the furniture and bedding in her apartment, only brought some personal belongings and important documents, and was about to leave Coruscant. Escape, Candace thought to herself, this should be considered as running away in the middle of the night. Yang piloted her spaceship into the upper atmosphere and arrived at the Clone Legion checkpoint in Coruscant's near space, which was a checkpoint leading to the outside world and hyperspace lanes. Candace discovered that fighter jets and warships were scattered near the space station at the checkpoint, and Coruscant had been urgently blocked. She couldn't help but feel nervous. What should she do if she couldn't leave? Application CC22059711, please repeat the ship model, personnel on board, and purpose of departure. A clone soldier appeared on the screen and mechanically ordered. The Xiaopiao spacecraft is a passenger hyperspace spacecraft, with the nationality of the Republic of Corellia. I am Corellian Counselor Candace. Today, I officially suspended my duties due to illness and returned to my home planet to report and recuperate. There are crew members on board, my assistant, and my personal medical team. Candace worked hard to keep her voice calm. The clone soldiers carefully reviewed the information on the data board. At this moment, a clone who looked like a commander walked over and faced the screen. Her heart lifted up to her throat. I'm sorry for any inconvenience caused. Coruscant has been completely sealed off on the special order of the Emperor, and no ships are allowed to leave. Candace's heart was beating wildly. However, you have already submitted a formal application and it has been approved before this. We can release it, but you need to allow a team of soldiers to board the ship to inspect for any hidden personnel. Candace turned to ask Yang Yen, who nodded. So she said, no problem, you can board the ship. Yang Yen brought the spacecraft closer to the space station, and a team of 5 clone soldiers came up with explosive guns in hand. Candace tried to maintain her composure and was greatly surprised by their meticulousness and vigilance. 2 soldiers aimed their guns at the cabin and were ready to shoot at any time. 3 soldiers checked all of her storage compartments. Clear. Soldier report. Sorry for taking up your time, you can leave now, the soldier in charge said to her and turned around before leaving. Yang Yen moved his lightsaber hidden from his waist back to the control stick, piloted the spacecraft out of the airport, and finally entered the safe waters of outer space. When she ensured that the airport signal could not capture them, she said to Yang Yen, we can go to Utapa now. Yang Yen remained silent, reset the coordinates to Utapa, and then they entered the hyperspace channel. **** The Corellian Jedi is the judicial authority and force user of the Corellian galaxy. They usually only perform tasks within the Corellian galaxy and never care about affairs outside of Corellia. They were patriots of Corellia, and in order to show loyalty to Corellia, all members of the Samurai Order wore green uniforms, hence they were jokingly referred to as the Green Jedi. After the Corellian Democratic Revolution, the uniform of the Corellian Jedi was changed to a deep blue color similar to the national flag, which was publicly mocked by the Jedi Council. Same person setting, authors own Corellian history, although they are both users of the Force's bright side, the Corellian Jedi are very different from the mainstream Jedi in the Milky Way. The Corellian Jedi creed allows attachment, which they refer to as love, so the Corellian Jedi have a family and personal property. They do not abstain from practicing, but instead focus their energy on enforcing the law and defending the country. The Corellian Jedi leads the Corellian militia, national army, and ground security forces, and has a high reputation among the public. Many giant companies hire a Corellian Jedi as a board member to provide some advice. Official settings, before the Rusin Reformation, the Corellian Jedi had conflicts with the mainstream Jedi, until after the Rusin Reformation, the mainstream Jedi gave up the light army in some power, and the Corellian Jedi stayed in the Corellian system and never came out again. Official history, the Corellia Jedi are a research organization that studies both the Force and science, with great scientific achievements. Corellian Jedi Academy is one of the most famous academic and research institutions in Corellia and even the Milky Way. Official settings, Corellian Jedi are also a group of cold, stiff, emotionless, and ruthless individuals. Except for sleeping and bathing, the Corellian Jedi must wear uniforms at all times. Designed by the author, similar to mainstream Jedi, the Corellian Jedi also have a master-apprentice system, where a master can only have one apprentice at a time, and the master-apprentice usually acts together, officially set. Force-sensitive children usually officially become apprentices around the age of 13. Although attachment is not prohibited by the Corellian Jedi, apprentices still have to leave their families to go to the Jedi Temple for training and learning, and love and marriage are prohibited during the apprenticeship period. Early love is prohibited. Usually, apprentices will become independent Jedi warriors around the age of 25. Designed by the author. Chapter 7. Utapaobiwang Rescue. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next day, daylight fell, but Anakin did not wake up. Obi Wan and Anakin hid in this cave and didn't leave all day. At least 48 criteria have passed since the clone betrayed the Jedi, and Anakin's condition is rapidly deteriorating. His high fever has never subsided, and Obi-Wan has given up taking hormone-based fever-reducing drugs for him, and now he has completely fallen into a coma. Occasionally, his eyes would rotate under his eyelids, indicating that he was dreaming or experiencing some hallucinations, during which he would constantly moan and wriggle. They stayed in place for the whole day without any treatment or food. Obi-Wan could only feed Anakin some distilled water, hoping that his own immune system and fibrinogen could defeat the virus in his body, or his waist injury could be alleviated. He took him away from Utapa to seek treatment. Night has descended again, the second night of the downfall of the Jedi Order. The signal of the Force is still filled with death and sorrow, and Obi-Wan still dares not let go of the barrier that obscures Anakin to connect with the Universal Force. He couldn't fall asleep. After feeding Anakin water, he lay down and gazed at the night sky outside the cave entrance. Late at night, as if their luck was not bad enough, it started raining in this area of Utapa. Now it's great, Obi-Wan thought to himself. Once the rain falls, the grasslands of Utapa will turn into swamps, and the endless mud will slow down the progress of the clones' ground search and trap them here unable to leave. They and the enemy were both locked in place. He was lost in thought of his escape plan with Anakin, when artificial light flickered in the pitch black outside the cave. He ignored the sharp pain in his waist and immediately sat up, placing his hand on the lightsaber. Did the clones finally find them? Obi-Wan tried to calm himself, thinking to himself. A strong white searchlight pierced through the rain curtain and shone towards the cave, illuminating Anakin's curled body and piercing his eyes. He squinted his eyes and looked back at a strange white spaceship parked not far away. It was not the Clone Corps' spaceship, but he still dared not put down the lightsaber. The strange white spaceship flexibly folded its wings, and the jet lander at the bottom suspended on the surface of the mud. The engine blew away the rainstorm, and the rainwater entered the cave. Then he sensed a strong signal in the Force. There were powerful Force users on this ship. It's not the dark side, but a light side Force different from the Jedi, and he's very confident that he hasn't been in contact with it before. The figure of a woman descended from the hanging ladder, half of her legs immediately sinking into the mud. Obi-Wan extinguished his lightsaber and observed the reaction of the opponent's spaceship. He sensed that the Force user was still on the spaceship and did not appear. The unfamiliar woman struggled to pull her legs out of the mud, walked to the cave entrance, took off her raincoat, and spoke. "Are you General Obi-Wan Kenobi and General Anakin Skywalker?" She hesitated and glanced at Anakin lying unconscious on the ground, confirming to Obi-Wan. "I am General Kenobi," he replied cautiously. "I am Candace, a Corellian MP. The era of the Galactic Republic has come to an end, and the Jedi Order has been completely destroyed for treason. Speaker Palpatine announced the establishment of the Galactic Empire, and all Jedi warriors will be arrested and executed." The other party succinctly explained to Obi-Wan the massive disruption of the Milky Way, and before Obi-Wan had time to digest this information, he continued. "I have been ordered by President Corellia and the Republican government to take 2 individuals to Corellia for temporary refuge. You have helped with Corellia's revolution during the Clone Wars, and the Corellian New Republic government and the Corellian Jedi will not sit idly by while the heroes of the galaxy are slandered and killed. If you agree to go, the President and Master Clark will be very happy." Obi-Wan felt relieved upon hearing that the other party was not here to kill him and Anakin. It seems that the Force user on the spaceship should be the Corellian Jedi. He still didn't know the other party's intentions and was not familiar with the Corellian Jedi, but Anakin's condition was deteriorating and they had no other choice. "I am very grateful for taking us away and providing shelter. Anakin's current condition is very poor, and I hope he can receive treatment as soon as possible," Obi-Wan cautiously replied. Upon hearing this news, the legislator came forward to observe Anakin's condition. Obi-Wan restrained his desire for protection, as the other party was not carrying weapons and would not harm Anakin. He's already unconscious. Shit. Obi-Wan heard the congressman curse softly. I have a medical cabin and my personal medical team on board, but these may not be enough. With his current health condition, he must go to Corellia for treatment as soon as possible. The congressman calmly suggested, and Obi-Wan nodded. Could you please carry him to the boat together? I will sink into the mud alone. The senator said, pulling Anakin's feet. Obi-Wan lifted his upper body, and so the three left the cave into the rainstorm, moved little by little in the mud, and finally boarded the cabin. The cabin door closed behind them, and Utapa was isolated outside on a rainy night. The bright and soft light in the cabin made him a bit uncomfortable. He blinked his eyes, and by then the senator had already called for a doctor and nurse. After several doctors sought his consent, they moved Anakin onto the bed and pushed him into the medical warehouse. Obi-Wan couldn't help but follow, and the senator reached out to stop him. You're injured, don't move around for now. After they settle down with General Skywalker, they will come here to heal you. He then realized the dull pain coming from his waist. The spacecraft quietly left Utapa in the pitch-black rainy night, with the cockpit door open and the pilot setting the coordinates to Corellia. They saw through the doors and windows in the cabin of the spaceship that the doctor had hung a hanging bottle for Anakin, with a breathing mask covering his face. Can you please tell me what happened to the Jedi Order and why Speaker Palpatine suddenly declared you treason? Counselor Candace handed him a glass of warm water and asked after a moment of silence. I'm not sure what happened in Coruscant either. We were in Utapa. My commander seemed to have received an order from Coruscant, and suddenly all the clones turned to shoot at the Jedi. Obi-Wan's skull hurt sharply, and he felt pain recalling all of this. When I left Coruscant, the Jedi Temple was surrounded and attacked by clones, and it caught fire. The congressman said, placing her hand on Obi-Wan's knee. The speaker announced in Parliament that the Jedi were attempting to assassinate him, and therefore the entire Jedi Order committed treason. Later, he announced the implementation of Emergency Order 66, which was probably an order to execute all Jedi. Order 66, execute all Jedi. Obi-Wan shuddered. He seemed to have heard of it somewhere, but had no clue at all. The congressman saw that he did not answer and whispered, although I don't know what the Jedi did or what happened within the Jedi Order, almost all of your companions in Coruscant have died. I don't know what happened. The Jedi can't betray the Republic, there must be some reason. Obi-Wan's head hurt even more. All this, the death of the Jedi, the death of his brothers and sisters, the betrayal of Cody, and the critical illness of Anakin, made him hard to accept and destroyed his will little by little. You don't know what's happening within your organization after the assassination of the speaker, that's not good. The pilot, who had been silent all along, suddenly spoke without turning his head and calmly commented. This is not my decision, it must be the committee's decision. Obi-Wan retorted, suddenly stopping. He didn't realize that the pilot was the unfamiliar Force user, the Corellian Jedi. He couldn't believe that his perception of the Force was so weak, perhaps because his mind was too disorganized and his body was too tired to notice. The other person was right in front of him, and he never noticed it. The congressman quickly stood up to maintain peace, and the Corellian Jedi no longer made any comments. The enemy of the previous separatist forces once unintentionally revealed that the Sith controlled the entire parliament. Somehow Obi-Wan remembered Dooku, recalling what he had said to himself at the beginning of the Clone Wars. The Jedi were too arrogant and blinded their eyes, Dooku said at that time. Now Dooku has been killed by Anakin, and the Jedi Order has also been destroyed. I'm thinking that it's the Sith Lord behind the scenes who controls everything. Upon hearing the word Sith, the Corellia Jedi finally turned his head and listened attentively. This is important to us, the senator said. We will continue to investigate this matter. But Obi-Wan had a severe headache, with countless thoughts in his mind but unable to connect, unable to form a conclusion. The truth was hidden behind layers of darkness. So they sat silently in the spaceship, worried about flying to Corellia. Note, original plot, background description. Corellia Republic. Corellia was once an ancient dynasty. During the Clone Wars in the Milky Way, external forces were powerless to influence the political situation in Corellia. Corellia erupted into a republican revolution that overthrew the Corellian royal family. At the beginning of the story, the Corellian New Republic government had already been established. The Correlian Jedi split during the revolution, with some being royalists who sought to maintain royal rule, while others were revolutionaries who led the Revolutionary Army to win the war and successfully overthrow the last Golden Flower dynasty. Revolutionary leader Master Clark became the leader of the Corellian Jedi Order, and now the Corellian Jedi are the judicial authority and actual leader of the military in the Republic. After the revolution, in order to represent the Republic, all Corellian Jedi changed from the old green uniform to a deep blue uniform similar to the flag of the Republic, and Green Jedi became Blue Jedi. The Corellian Jedi had a war with the mainstream Jedi of the galaxy. Even during the Clone Wars, relations were once extremely tense. However, the 501 Legion led by Anakin had fought against the separatist forces in the central region of the Milky Way, objectively helping the Corellian Revolutionary Army avoid attacks from the separatist forces. The Royal Army lost external environmental support and collapsed. Chapter 8. Corellian Obi Wan's Blue Jedi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Little Pygmy Owl spacecraft landed in Corellian City, the capital of Corellia, carrying Obi Wan, the senator, and the unconscious Anakin. The medical compartment of the spacecraft only temporarily maintained Anakin's life and there was no way to treat it. Near the apron, ambulances and medical teams were already waiting in the rain. They arrived on the spaceship, pushed Obi Wan off the spaceship with a wheelchair, and then Anakin was transferred out of the medical warehouse. The heavy rain in Korea mixed with sea breeze came crashing towards us. The Corellian Jedi, who was piloting the spaceship, said one or two words to the senator, then nodded at Obi Wan and left. The senator walked over and pushed Obi Wan's wheelchair, saying to him, "You need to go to the orthopedic department for treatment now, so please don't worry." The doctors who picked up Anakin are from the University of the Jedi of Corellia, many of whom are also Jedi. After you receive proper treatment, Yang Yen told me that Master Clark of the Jedi of Corellia will personally come here to see you and Anakin, and discuss the next matters with you. His waist was quickly cast and secured with a bulky waist brace. He is now completely unable to bend or lean, but at least he can walk. Congressman, I am very grateful for your care. Can we go and visit Anakin now? Just call me Candace, the congressman said with a bitter smile. I'm no longer a member of the Galactic Republic. Palpatine dismissed you from your position. Obi-Wan asked, what happened to the Galactic Council? Oh, no, the Emperor hasn't reorganized the council yet, Candace waved her hand. I applied for medical leave myself. But I guess the council probably won't last long. An empire doesn't need a council. Candace's young face was unusually heavy, so she said casually, I will be staying at the hospital affiliated with the University of Korea for the time being. If you or Anakin have any needs, please go to the respiratory department to find me. They arrived at the emergency center together and saw Anakin lying inside through the window, connected to various pipes and machines. A Jedi physician wearing a deep blue almost black robe walked over and said, Are you the guardian of Anakin Skywalker? After receiving a positive answer, he handed him a pen and a data sheet. Anakin's situation is very dangerous. He contracted sepsis due to bacterial infection in his wound, and multiple organs have begun to fail. The doctor carefully observed his emotions and said, If necessary, we need to cut open his body for intubation and rescue. This is the consent form, and this is the critically ill notice. Please sign it. He twisted his name with trembling hands. Normally, a Jedi wouldn't get sick. After examining his wound, we found it to be just a superficial wound, and we didn't expect it to cause such a serious infection. The Jedi physician frowned and asked, perhaps this is related to the previous fluctuations in the cosmic force. The ebb and flow of the force will in turn affect the Jedi's abilities. Anakin is the son of the force, Obi Wan confirmed in a hoarse voice. He doesn't have a father, so he can be said to be the incarnation of the force. Now that the bright side has died and the force's tide has fallen to a low point, I should have used a lightsaber to burn and disinfect his wound. He felt extremely guilty. Kenobi, how many more times do you have to disappoint him? The prophecy of the chosen son, murmured the Jedi physician, leaving anxiously. Candace clearly didn't understand their conversation. She received a communication message and gestured to him before walking out. After a while, she returned, followed by several Jedi Masters, the Corellian Jedi. He realized that he had indeed changed to a deep blue robe, as the news reported. General Kenobi, this is the leader of the Corellian Jedi Order, Master Clark, Candace introduced. He quickly stood up from the chair, but the other person pushed him down and said, please don't be too polite, Master Kenobi, you're injured. He observed this renowned Jedi Master, one of the national leaders of the Corellian system. He was not familiar with the politics of Corellia and only knew that the other had just destroyed the last Golden Flower dynasty of Corellia and established a republic. I am deeply saddened by what has happened in the Temple of Coruscant and the plight of the Jedi Order. Master Kenobi, we are all users of the Force's bright side. Please accept my condolences. If you or the Skywalker Knight have any needs, please feel free to raise them. We are honored to help the heroes of the Milky Way. Thank you for your generous care. At this critical moment, I don't know how to express my gratitude, Obi Wan said diplomatically. He remembered the previous conflict between the Jedi Council and the Corellian Jedi, so he was very cautious. They cannot be trusted, he remembers one and Master Ki-Adi saying, they were first Corellians, then Jedi. Moreover, they all have their own attachment relationships, family, wealth, and overly intimate mentors. I hope the situation of the Skywalker Knight can improve as soon as possible. I understand your heartache. I also have apprentices who have already graduated, and I dare not imagine such a thing happening to him. Master Clark looked at the unconscious Anakin in the ICU and said, the Force is fading, and I can sense the sadness in the cosmic force. Now is the lowest point in Force strength in 1,000 years, and without the Force, Jedi are no different from ordinary people. I heard the rumor of the chosen son, Obi Wan couldn't help but tremble. He quickly found out Anakin's identity, but Master Clark didn't turn his head and continued to stare at Anakin, saying, for 1,000 years, the Jedi and Sith were once able to destroy each other's star ships with the Force by hand, but now, the legendary son of the Force is critically ill due to a wound infection. Now that the mainstream Jedi have been completely destroyed, the Force is almost no longer fluctuating, and the Galactic Republic has been overthrown into the Galactic Empire. The Sith Lord behind them controls everything. He turned around and looked at Obi-Wan. This is indeed the darkest moment. At such moments, we must persist in following the bright side, believing in the Force, and believing that the bright side will surely triumph. Obi-Wan cautiously repeated the teachings of the Jedi Order. Master Clark changed his tone and said, in the current situation, I suggest that you continue to stay in Corellia after Skywalker improves. The Corellia Jedi is the only remaining user of the bright side, and I suggest that you join us. The Republic of Corellia is one of the most powerful galaxies in the Milky Way, with military, economic, population, and scientific research. Perhaps you will find new meaning in life here, serving the Force and the people. He was trying to recruit troops, recruit himself and Anakin, Obi-Wan realized. He deliberately remained silent for a moment before saying, I am very grateful for your trust and kindness. I am sorry that I cannot agree to this invitation immediately. I have been loyal to the Jedi Order and the Galactic Republic since I was born. I am not sure if I can change my identity so quickly. Master Clark nodded in understanding and said, "Yes, the Jedi Order has just been destroyed. You must feel very sad and confused. But please be aware that the people of Corellia respect you and General Skywalker, and the door to the Jedi Temple in Corellia has been opened to you." He stood up, solemnly shook Obi Wan's hand, and turned to leave. The Jedi who followed him bowed to him and whispered, "May the Force be with you and the Skywalker Knight." Then they followed him out of the emergency department. After a while, Candace approached and she hadn't spoken yet. "In that case, do you have any plans for the future?" she asked eagerly. Obi-Wan shook his head, feeling heavy and disinterested in chatting. Candace sighed and said, "I understand that the Galactic Republic has been destroyed, and I have just lost my job and can't find a future. I don't want to go back and listen to the Emperor and perform some form of democratic performance. I guess President Correlia may want me to be one of his staff." After a while, she said goodbye to Obi-Wan and went to see her doctor in the respiratory department. Leave Obi-Wan sitting alone in the corridor outside the intensive care unit, waiting for Anakin to wake up. Arthur Clarke's name pays tribute to my favorite science fiction writer. Chapter 9. Correlian Anakin Illusion or Reality. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Anakin had a strange dream, but at first he didn't realize it was a hallucination, as if he had experienced it before. Somehow, he didn't follow Obi-Wan to Utapa. He felt strange. He remembered being attacked by clones in Utapa and then injured, but now he is in the Temple of Coruscant, bidding farewell to his master and friends on the apron. "I'm proud of you," his master said the same words, "May the Force be with you, old friend." He was greatly shocked by everything that followed, and his soul was restless. He found in the Speaker's office that the Sith Lord who controlled all of this was the Speaker of Palpatine himself, and the Speaker. Or should he be called Darth Sidious, requesting his help and demanding his loyalty. He can save Padme, he knows the secret of Dos Plagueis, but he is a Jedi. He should have killed the Speaker, but he doesn't know what to do. Obi-Wan is not here. He reported the truth to the Jedi Council. Max 1 led 3 masters to assassinate the Speaker and left him in the Jedi Temple. He is extremely anxious at this moment, almost unable to think normally. The Speaker will die, and the only person who can save Padme will die. He struggled for a long time and arrived at the Speaker's office. The Speaker is unarmed, and in a fit of rage, Meth 1 is raising his lightsaber, no. He rushed forward and cut off Wen's hand. Immediately after, a huge energy shot out of Palpatine's hand, and the Force lightning exploded on Worm. He watched in horror as Meth Worm screamed and died. There is no turning back anymore. He killed Metz Vaughn and betrayed the Jedi, which he did for Padme. He knelt in front of Palpatine Darth Sidious and swore allegiance. "My young disciple, from now on, your name is Darth Vader." Darth Vader stood up and the Emperor broadcasted to the entire universe, "Execute Order 66. He led the 501 Legion to the entrance of the Jedi Temple. He didn't know how many Jedi he had slaughtered. In the end, he stood in the committee meeting room, where some Jedi juniors, the oldest being only 7 years old, were hiding. They saw him and said, "Master Skywalker, there are too many of them. What should we do?" He lit his lightsaber. Anakin, who was dreaming, screamed, "No. They are still children. Stop it now." But Darth Vader turned a deaf ear and walked towards the children. He struggled frantically, screaming, pulling, biting, all in vain, seeing them through blurred tears. The children dying one by one under his own lightsaber. He covered his eyes and screamed for an unknown amount of time before the scene changed again. This is a planet covered in lava everywhere, covered in blood, and a spaceship came to a stop. "Padme," he breathed a sigh of relief, "it's Padme." "Obi-Wan said you did something terrible, Annie, I can't continue walking with you." Padme looked at him with a frightened expression. "He is a devil, a demon who slaughters children. Anakin wanted to hold her and ask if she was safe, but Darth Vader reached out and Padme was lifted up in mid-air by her neck, struggling weakly like a puppet in suffocation. "Stop it for me!" he shouted at himself. "She is your wife, you're pregnant and soon to give birth wife." At this moment, Obi Wan appeared, and Darth Vader released Padme. Anakin breathed a sigh of relief, wanting to know if the other person was still alive. Vader rushed all his anger towards Obi Wan, and he heard himself say in horror, "This is your end, Master." They began a fierce battle, and years of fighting side by side allowed them to predict each other's strengths and weaknesses. "Don't do this anymore. Anakin no longer has the strength to scream, slaughter children, harm Padme, and now he's going to kill Obi-Wan again. Please," he said to himself, "he's your only relative now, and your wife's life or death is still uncertain. Go and save her." Obi-Wan kept giving in, but Darth Vader, blinded by hatred and anger, couldn't see him. He jumped up recklessly and made a fatal mistake. Anakin was horrified to see Obi-Wan cut off his hands and feet, and his body fell like a broken puppet. Obi-Wan's cheeks were marked with tears. "You are the chosen one. You should bring balance to the Force, not fall into the dark side." He had already fallen into a frenzy. "I hate you. I love you," Obi-Wan said. Darth Vader seemed to wake up for a moment and opened his mouth to say something. Intense pain struck, and he couldn't help but scream. The lava ignited his clothes, and his body caught fire, but he couldn't extinguish it. The flames melted his skin, devoured him, and thick smoke entered his lungs. He reached out in despair, but Obi-Wan turned around and left. "Don't leave, help me," he thought to himself. "Padme still, I love you." A voice sounded above his head, as if someone was crying. "I love you, Anakin, wake up quickly." Obi-Wan. He was right beside him and he didn't leave. Anakin suddenly realized that what had just happened was an illusion, and he tightly grasped the other person. Obi-Wan. He returned to reality, but in just a few seconds, he was pulled back into a coma. He is still trapped in this terrible illusion. The cold robotic arm of the medical robot mercilessly cleaned the wounds on his body, scraped off the ulcerated skin, drilled through bones with an electric drill, and connected the robotic arm and leg to the severed limb. He desperately wanted to scream, but his lungs still seemed to be burning and unable to breathe. The robot put on a black survival suit for him, as if trapped in a black coffin, unable to touch or feel. Finally, they brought a terrifying black mask and helmet, irresistibly covering his head like fate. "Mask. Take it off. He cannot breathe on his own and can only make piercing sounds according to the rhythm of the machine." He wriggled desperately in bed, struggling to lift his hand, trying to take off his mask. "Don't move around," a strange voice, warm, human hands pressed down on him. "Don't be afraid, you are safe now," the stranger comforted him. He was still immersed in that terrible illusion, slowly feeling himself lying on a soft bed covered in sweat, his hands and feet gradually recovering from numbness. It turned out that he still had hands and feet, and next to him was the dripping sound of machines. He slowly opened his eyes and found himself wearing a breathing mask with various tubes connected to his body. He opened his mouth and let out a faint hoarse voice, "Where's Padme? Is she okay? Who is Padme?" The stranger's voice was puzzled. "There's a Mr. Kenobi outside who's been guarding there. Do you want him to come in?" Obi-Wan, he remembered. So he nodded. He closed his eyes and, in a daze, heard a familiar voice calling him Anakin. He opened his eyes. Obi-Wan's face was filled with sorrow, with 2 faint tears visible, and a sad and haggard appearance reminiscent of the illusion. "What happened? Padme?" he asked. "She's fine, she already knows the situation. She's in Naboo now, and she'll be here in a while." He breathed a sigh of relief and finally relaxed. Padme was still alive. Obi-Wan gently stroked his hair and said, "Oh, Anakin, poor child." He felt confused. What is this place? What happened? He doesn't remember at all. What's wrong with me? Am I sick? You're seriously ill, it's sepsis, Obi Wan explained. Fortunately, you woke up. You just burned like fire. What's going on? He vaguely remembered the clone, injured, feverish, on the plane. Obi Wan brought him a glass of water, inserted a straw, and handed it to him. Come, drink some water, rest well. What is this? He wanted to ask, but Obi Wan continued, be good, drink it, it will get better soon. So he took a few sips, with a sweet honey taste. He fainted before he could figure out what it was. This time, he didn't dream. Chapter 10. Corellian Anakin's Human Disqualification. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Warning. Description of depression and suicide plot. Anakin had just been pushed out of the ICU, but he still felt weak and knew nothing about anything except that he was in Corellia. How did he come here? He remembers them in Utapa, where clone soldiers betrayed them and shot at them. Order 66, when he remembered the contents of his vision, he couldn't help but shudder and eliminate all the Jedi, which also happened in reality. He recalled the content of the illusion, which was so real that it seemed like he had experienced another life. He could still vaguely feel the burning pain all over his body, and hear Obi-Wan's hoarse, I love you. He nervously touched his hands and feet, confirming that all three were still there, and that one mechanical arm was chopped off by Dooku at the beginning of the Clone Wars. It's okay, nothing happened. He tried hard to comfort himself. Obi-Wan is still here, and Padme will come in a few days. He has already contacted Padme. Padme connected Obi-Wan's encrypted communication channel, and Obi-Wan handed him the communicator. Padme's sweet voice pulled him back from the lingering fear and said, I'm going to see you soon, Annie. Something beautiful has happened, and we've become parents. I guess we've both won the bet now. We have 2 babies, a man and a woman. Padme was excited as if about to cry, it's Luke and Leia, my dear. When I recover, I'll go to Corellia to see you immediately. Anakin couldn't help but burst into tears. What shocked him the most was that Speaker Palpatine was the Sith Lord himself. He had already told Obi-Wan about this part, but omitted the part where he joined the dark side. The other party's fearful expression made him end the conversation. He didn't want to recall all of this. The speaker had been paying special attention to him since he came to Coruscant, but now it seems that the respect, listening, and care he cherished in this friendship of more than a decade were fake from the beginning. Darth Sidious planned all of this from the beginning, controlling the Parliament as a high leader of the Galactic Republic and instigating the Galactic Civil War through the manipulation of separatist forces by Dooku. Through the war, he continuously seized power and eventually became the Emperor of the Empire. I don't know how the Parliament is doing now. Is the Jedi Temple of Coruscant still there? He thought about these questions and opened the holographic network live broadcast in the ward. His own and Obi-Wan's avatars appeared prominently on the big screen. The citizens of the Galactic Empire, Jedi traitors Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, are still at large. The Jedi Order is attempting to assassinate the speaker and commit treason. If not arrested immediately, these 2 Jedi traitors will cause immeasurable chaos and destruction. His Majesty the Emperor of the Galactic Empire personally orders that anyone who provides evidence will receive a heavy reward. The scene cuts to the Galaxy Council building, which turns out to be a council meeting. In the live footage, there was a riot in the Parliament. A Togluta counselor. Anakin's heart tightened as he thought of Ahsoka. Stood up and shouted, General Kenobi and General Skywalker will never betray the country. They have sacrificed everything for the Republic. What have you done to them? The security guard of the Parliament, now the Emperor's guard, walked over and tried to pull her away, causing chaos in the Parliament building. We want General Skywalker. We want General Skywalker. Someone shouted, and the voices of the legislators grew louder. We can't harm Skywalker. We can't harm Skywalker. Anakin suddenly had a sore nose, and he has been very emotional lately. It turns out that there are still people who remember him, and it turns out that the people of the Milky Way like him. The turmoil in the Parliament has been out of control. At this time, a familiar and strange figure came onto the stage and the camera zoomed in. Anakin looked at Palpatine's twisted, horrible, pale face, and those terrible golden red eyes, the eyes of Sith. Just like the first mock examination in the illusion. Cold sweat flowed from his neck to his back, and the Parliament gradually quieted down. Ladies and gentlemen, I understand your feelings toward Skywalker, but I must say that this kind of feeling has been wrongly paid off. Palpatine Sidious said in a low and hoarse voice, I assure you that if Skywalker is not arrested, he will definitely bring disaster to the Milky Way. The Parliament building was filled with buzzing sounds. Legislators, before the start of the Clone Wars, Skywalker's nature had already been exposed. 3 years ago, he had committed an unforgivable crime. 3 years ago, Anakin struggled to recall what happened. There was another riot at the Parliament scene, and Palpatine's deputy shouted loudly, Order! Order! The Emperor ignored and covered the crowd's noise with a louder voice. 3 years ago in Tatooine, Anakin Skywalker massacred an entire Tuskentia nomadic tribe. The elderly, children, and pregnant women were not spared. Memories that had already died crawled out of the grave, and Anakin seemed to see the bones buried in the past, like falling ice caves. He thought he had forgotten, he thought the world had forgotten, only Padme knew about it, right? At his foolish and childish age, he told Palpatine about it for a little pitiful comfort. But Palpatine had always kept this matter in mind, and now he has finally used the knife he personally handed out to completely destroy his reputation. Does he regret it? It's hard to say, but at this moment he feels heartbroken for the innocent Sand people who died and did not harm his mother, those children. But if he had to go back to the beginning and see his mother's tragic death again, he knew he would still make the same choice. The bitterness of revenge finally returned to his heart after 3 years. He had no intention of continuing watching the program, and the parliamentary scene on the screen was like a hornet's nest being poked. Everyone was discussing, cursing, and afraid. Anakin Skywalker, a Jedi warrior, a fearless hero, and the poster boy of the Republic, has always been a murderer, massacrer, and devil. His image has died in the minds of citizens of the Milky Way, and Anakin Skywalker has transformed into a monster like in a vision, no longer existing. He lay in bed for the next few days, motionless, without eating or drinking. There was a gathering crowd outside the hospital, and even through the windows and walls, he could feel the gaze of the Corellians at him. Murderers, demons who slaughter children, they were right. When doctors and nurses treat and administer fluids to him, they will avoid his gaze and leave quickly after completing the task. Occasionally, Corellian Jedi appear at the door. They have been guarding his safety in the hospital since he came here. And now their eyes are filled with disgust and disdain. You have betrayed the light side, betrayed the Jedi's creed, and they seem to be saying. He didn't open the news again to see the opinions of the Galactic Council or the masses towards him. Obi Wan comes every day, and now he knows about it, but he's still trying to talk to him. He can't hear clearly or respond, just curled up deeper in bed. How did Obi Wan manage to keep an eye on him? He betrayed all his teachings, he is the biggest stain on his life. On that day, he received a message from Padme, which was a photo of their child. The baby in the photo was squeezed into the same small bed, sleeping soundly, pure as if it didn't belong to this world. I'm recovering very well and I'll be able to see you soon, Annie. I love you, she said in a brief sentence. He should feel happy, this should be the happiest moment of his life, he is a father. But he didn't feel happy, only numbness and boundless regret. He didn't deserve to have children, he slaughtered someone else's children. The scene from the illusion once again came to mind. He would continue to slaughter children, and the children in the Jedi Temple would fall one by one under his lightsaber. He knew that was what would have happened. Or rather what should have happened. If he had stayed in the Temple of Coruscant at that time. His prophetic dreams always come true, just like his mother did that time. In an instant, a clear consciousness flashed through my mind and slowly poured down from above like a basin of cold water. Padme was coming with the children, and he would harm them. He remembered Padme in his vision again. In a fit of rage, he grabbed her neck. She desperately wanted to breathe, then suffocated, lost consciousness, and collapsed to the ground. Anakin's heart twitched, and his wife, who was about to give birth, was the best person in the galaxy. He knew he would kill her, and that illusion was not just a nightmare, but an established reality. Order 66, Palpatine was Darth Sidious. Soon, the later part of the prophecy dream will also come true, and Padme will come with the child. But before that, he still had one last chance to prevent the prophecy from coming true. His heart was filled with unwillingness, how he wished to see her again. The last time he kissed her lips, those lips said, "I love you," countless times. But he also knew that once they met again, he could no longer make up his mind, and the cost of failing this mission was too great. He smiled bitterly and thought to himself, what a terrible husband he was. Even though he was married, he dared not make it public. Even though he was in true love, he couldn't see each other often. Their love was full of concealment and deception. As the war spread in the Milky Way, they always argued due to differences of opinion, and they never remembered their original appearance. In that peaceful Naboo lake, young people confided in each other. Sour memories surged in my heart, seeing what I had become. Now I have to bid farewell without saying goodbye. He remembered Obi Wan, and his guilt was indescribable. Honor your master, he remembers his oath when he became Obi Wan's apprentice. His actions never brought glory to Obi Wan or himself, on the contrary, he has now become the reason used by the Imperial Emperor to smear Obi Wan. He is the biggest stain on Obi Wan's life and career. He is not only not a qualified Jedi, but now he cannot even be considered a good person. Obi Wan should have thrown him back to Tatooine instead of wasting 10 years raising and educating him. He remembered the days and nights spent together, the brotherly bond. What causes this emotional distortion and alienation? The distrust of the Jedi Council, the pressure of war, the seduction of the speaker, the deception, exploitation, and lies between them, filled his heart with resentment. In his illusions, a part of his anger towards Obi Wan was also real. He is extremely ashamed. "I'm sorry, you can let go of my burden now." He remembered his mother, tears stuck in his throat from his nose, his poor, slave mother. He let her down and left her to live as a slave alone in Tatooine. When she was tortured by the Tuskens, he did not go back to save her. She died, and then he once again let her down and defiled her in the name of revenge. "Mom, if you knew what I had done in your name, what would you think of me?" It is almost impossible to steal the lightsaber back from Obi Wan. He observed his room and found that few people came in, giving him enough time to execute the plan. He attacked a medicine delivery robot with a string of code, making it no longer sound an alarm, and then dismantled it. His robotic arm provided an unexpected benefit, and even now, he has enough strength to straighten the metal sheet and expose the sharp edges. He opened the communicator again and looked at the pictures Padme sent him of the children over and over again, remembering their sleeping faces, closed eyes, and toothless mouths. "Luke, Leia," he softly recited their names. Luke, Leia, this is the last thought in the mind of young Anakin Skywalker.